Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to yet another beautiful video. And today we are going to talk about something that is involved very closely not only in my own art process, but in the world of fashion that I involve myself in, and that is antique military items. The reasons for me being so attracted to these antique pieces are because, in my opinion, they are some of the oldest lasting, best preserved clothing from the past. Of course, besides historically very important costumes, if someone specifically wore something, but otherwise, the longest standing items just seem to be military pieces. Whether that's because they had more time put into them in order to last longer, or any number of reasons for their longevity, they just do. And so today I want to present to all of you my military collection, or my antique military collection. First thing first, there is a lot of historical information in this video, and something that I haven't done to the best of my ability to the past, I wish to put forward from now on, and that will be at the bottom of the description. I will have links for sources for all the different information for each piece that I am mentioning, from more trivial fun facts to any of the hard-hitting actual information that I provide about these pieces. The pieces that I am talking about today obviously involve, in almost every manner of their being, militaries. Now, of course, especially with everything going on in the world right now, I want to make a very, very clear distinction. I am for non-violence in every manner of the word. I don't think violence should be the answer anytime, even as the response to violence. I think peace should always be the option, and it should always be strived for in absolutely every scenario. Now, when I own these pieces, I own them for their historical value and to teach not only the tailoring and understand the tailoring that was used in these items, but of course the stories that go along with them as well. People wore these pieces. People wore these pieces to fight, and people wore these pieces and died. That is nothing to take lightly in any sense. Help me strive for peace in every part of your life. Now, of course, I hope you enjoy taking a look at these beautiful crafts of clothing.
And we don't like federal agents.
You want to say hi? Say hi. Come here. And that's her opinion on the military and violence. I've previously taken the liberty of documenting a few of the different items that I currently have, and so I'm going to be using what I wrote in here as a guideline for talking about the pieces. Anyways, the very first piece we're going to start with, and we are starting with footwear, will be these boots right here. These are the BMJ... And now is when I get the book out. These are the BMJA MLE 52s. Originally created as the French version of the American M43 boot, it was created with battles such as Normandy in mind, with a larger scale release between 1952 to 1954 after World War II, and then eventually becoming the modern BMJA 65. This boot focused on an enforced ankle support for paratroopers, as well as being a step forward for full-lace boots. Side note on that, for a very long time, boots were not full-laced. So you would have a certain amount of lacing, and then you would either have a separate section that is attachable to create a full boot, or as you can see here, it is primarily using straps, and the boot fell. As you can hear, these are very, very heavy-duty boots. These weigh a ton, and that is a consistent theme with all the military boots that I'm going to be showing off today. But in the end, it's a true masterpiece of its time in look, the feel, and the heavy-weighted nature of the boot, which once again, I hope you were able to get an idea of as it fell onto the floor. These especially are quite unique in my own personal opinion because they have within inside stamps from whichever troop was traveling around wearing these boots, stamping them at each location they went. Once again, just enforcing that concept that these were worn by people. These were worn by people who went to war. And these were worn by people who risked their lives for the lives of others, which should have never been in the case in the first place. However, the craftsmanship, the detail, the innovation that this boot brought forth to the world of boots in general can never be overlooked. Another boot, the next boot, which is in a similar category and is quite infamous, as they are speculated to have inspired the Dior Navigate boot from around 07, and that's the Corcon, and pardon my pronunciation, the Corcon jump boot. These are once more a boot. These things will break your foot in rather than you breaking it in. Originally released during World War II, these boots were worn by the paratroopers of the USAF. Uniquely, these were not in any way Army-issued boots and were bought by the troops themselves. These were very, very high commodity items, and basically if you were a troop back then and you didn't have these, it was the thing to have. So people would spend their wages on buying these boots even though they were already supplied paratrooping boots by the military at the time. These boots are so tough, and this I've said a few times, that it is said that they break in your foot rather than your foot breaking in the boot. Once again, another very, very big step into the world of modern booting. Once again, these were not by the US military, so the quality of these is even further increased, as the craftsmanship that went in was done by those who cared for them. I mean, these are fabulous. They are lighter than the French boot. However, you still have that massive emphasis on ankle support for these paratroopers that not only were landing down on their ankles, but also then going through terrain, which is subpar for, ankle support. So both of these boots, very important, not only in the history of boots themselves, but very important within the history of military boots. It is a different day, however, let's just go into the final shoe that I want to show off. Finally, we have here a pair of 1950s US military parade derbies. Most notable for its easy-to-polish leather, as these shoes were worn for celebrations and parades. The process of shining them being called bull polishing, making fun of course, the impossibility of a clean shoe. But yeah, another just nice piece, once again, great construction and used primarily for celebrations instead of actual combat itself. Let's go to trousers, shall we? The very first one I wish to show off is this pair of 1940s US military jodhoppers. After being adopted into the French military look in the late 1800s, almost all militaries followed suit by wearing jodhoppers. Of course, jodhoppers originally being cavalry or riding pants for both the laymen and the actual military personnel in the past, they then eventually went on, as I mentioned, to being adopted by the French military. The reason a lot of the different militaries followed suit wasn't necessarily for convenience, except I will mention some parts of convenience with these pants, but it was actually stylistic. Once the French started doing it, everyone else wanted to. Besides the style aspect, they complemented the often worn tall boots of soldiers well and gave flexibility in the hip. Once more, being cavalry pants, they definitely helped out with that flexibility in the hip, and I think, of course, coming from speaking on boots, you can get a pretty good idea of how some of these tall laced boots would fit in perfectly with a pair of more tapered leg trousers like this. These pair in particular are an amazing dark green, very, very heavy wool. So of course, if you were to be wearing these, you would wear long underwear under them as well, because they get itchy. What do I smell like right now? What do I smell like right now? 9 times out of 10, I like to match my perfume with my outfit. So today, for the green aspect of it, I used Aesop's Quill, and for the darker aspects, we are wearing 11 by Boris Bajan-Sabiri. Wow. The next pair of trousers we are going to talk about, which are a little bit longer, so they are touching the floor now, are these British military #1 full dress trousers. As just mentioned, worn by the British military during ceremonies and parades for most of the last century. This pair in particular being from around 1950, with of course being the most notable for its bold side stripes. Just like the derbies that we previously saw, these were not worn for actual combat, but were worn for the actual parades and ceremonies that the militaries hold, of course, for propaganda reasons. These still are absolutely gorgeous in creation. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that I love these pieces so much is to understand the craftsmanship behind it. And these are a prime example of this. Once again, a heavier wool, yet they're put together so eloquently from the back pockets to once, as mentioned before, the beautiful side stripe that stands out. When you see this being worn, it not only elongates your legs, but you know what they are. So for propaganda purposes, in ceremonies or parades, these are the perfect pant for your soldiers to be wearing. And that's all for trousers for now. Let's move on to tops. For the very first item for tops, we have this here heavyweight flight shirt. The 1940s to 1950s heavyweight flight shirt, used by the USAG during the 1940s to 50s. Interesting fact, the USAG actually dates back to the American Civil War with the Balloon Corps, meaning that a lot of changes were made to their uniform upcoming to and post World War II in hopes of modernization. The specific time period being dubbed the Transition Era, this shirt being one of the new inclusions of the uniform. And it really is, as the name says, a heavyweight shirt. These would be worn primarily by pilots. Of course, the easy assumption here would be to be more protective against the colder weather at higher elevations. Of course, it's a big step going from a balloon corpse to actual planes with motors, and that, of course, changes a lot of the altitude you're at. So this being one of the main items worn greatly helped with those new higher elevations. Starting from here on out, actually, I have not documented yet a few of these items. So the paraphrasing of this information is going to be looser than the actual concrete information that I was providing previously. Of course, sources will continue to be provided for each of these items. The second shirt that we are looking at today is a 1960s USSR chef's shirt. This would have been worn by the chefs of the USSR Army in the 1960s, and one very notable aspect of this is the similar silhouette to shirts from the 16, 17, and 1800s that used a much more boxy design in order to save fabric. Of course, this would have been a time of mass rations for the Russian army, not only in the food they were probably providing, but in the material and the shape of the shirts themselves. Still, a very nicely put together piece for that. The stitching is nicer than most stuff you would actually see today, and the inclusion of details such as the USSR stamp print at the back of the shirt just makes it a really unique standout piece in time. This next piece here has a special place in my heart for a few reasons. One, in my opinion, the rarity or the importance of it, and two, the absolute beautiful aspect of its cropped shape. I never would have expected to see more cropped tops in a military uniform, but just as the full dress trousers and just as the parade derbies, this was actually worn for fine dining. This would have been a major general's fine dining top from World War II, more specifically for the US Air Force. Astonishing in every way. Once again, this thing is cropped at the waist, which gives it such a unique look. The craft, the buttons, the heavyweight aspect of it, you can tell that this was definitely the personal item of someone much higher up in the ranks, and that's what it is. Gorgeous. I have the pants for these as well that I did not show off in the trousers section, as they are more a standard black pair of trousers. Of course, they go perfectly with this item, but I didn't think it was necessary to talk about them separately. This next top, I would assume once more... Ooh, my mic! This top as well, I would assume, falls under that class of parade / non-active duty wear. More specifically because this was a part of the Valley Forge Military Academy in Philadelphia. The dating that I can put on this is either very early 1910s, 1920s, or very late 1880s, 1890s. I would love for anyone to be able to help me find out the actual specific information, but what I would like to point out is, once again, the craftsmanship of this piece. It is hard to describe how heavyweight this wool is in its being, and how beautiful each part of it is made once more. There are numbers within here as well, and it was created by SACO Uniforms in Philadelphia. Absolutely gorgeous. Once again, I do not presume that this was worn for combat, but probably for ceremonies or graduations of the actual academy itself. Another piece out of Philadelphia that I would presume also hits that category of parade or celebration wear. However, I have very little information on this piece. I am going to say it is from about 1960s, 70s, as it is far newer and you can tell this by the construction of it is a bit more sloppy, the weight of the fabric is far lighter, and we actually have plastic buttons instead of the beautiful bronze and silver ones that we have on all the other pairs of these in my collection. So being a newer piece, probably lower rank as well, without taking away the craftsmanship of it. Once more, even though it's not as impressive as the other pieces, it is still a very impressive piece that is made here. Newer for sure. Once again, not too much information on this piece. I have tried to find some, but it does get hard at times with more obscure pieces. Finally, for tops, we have the very standardized US military trench coat. This is a part of the Valor collection, which to my understanding means anyone could get it, even if they wanted to, up until today. However, the fit, the look, originally it had an inside lining as well that I messed up, it's a very impressive piece for what it is, especially if it is just part of a regular Valor collection. Gorgeous. As I said, the fit of this, the material is quite nice as well, and I do wish I didn't mess up the inside piece and would have kept that quilted aspect so I could have worn this in much colder climates. However, great look to it, definitely more modern as well. I would place this 2000 to 90s even. Still a great piece. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have been enjoying the content recently. I strive to continue to upload, continue to educate, and just show off not only the history of art that I love, but the art I love itself. So, thank you as always, and have an amazing day.